Hi everyone, my name is Emma and I'm a Visitor Experience Assistant here at Guelph Museums. Thanks for joining us for our weekly Museum of You activity. This is a weekly series of videos where we imagine that people 100 years in the future are going to want to see a museum exhibit all about you. Over these 6 weeks, I'll show you how to collect objects, pictures, and documents all about you that will help you make your very own museum exhibit. You can absolutely participate in today's activity without having seen the previous videos, but this video series does all go together. So if you want to watch those videos, I do recommend going to our Museums Everywhere page and watching the previous ones. In the first week of these videos, we talked about artifacts. Those are the physical objects that we use at museums to help tell the story of people who lived in the past. If you did the first week's activity, you've already collected a game or a toy that you're going to put in your exhibit. Today, we're going to quickly talk again about why artifacts are so important, and then I'll show you how to collect another artifact that you'll get to use in your exhibit. Here at Guelph Museums, we love talking about Guelph's history, and artifacts make talking about the past even more fun. If I sit here and tell you that in the past, fancy ladies liked wearing feathers on their hats, that's fine, and you might be able to imagine what that looked like. But it's way more fun if I show you what that looked like. Can you imagine walking around downtown Guelph and seeing people wearing hats that looked like this? It would look pretty different to walking around today, I think. That kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of what Guelph in the past might have looked like. Or what if I told you that people used to use something called a mangle to dry their clothes? Would you be able to picture what a mangle looked like? Because we have an artifact of it, we can see this is a mangle here, and you would dry your clothes by squeezing it through these rollers and cranking this around and around. When we look at an artifact like this, we can ask all sorts of questions about what life was like when people used this. If people were using these, do you think they had electricity to use? Do you think it was easy to dry their clothing? I've tried one of these out, and doing that gave me a little taste of what life was like back when people were still using these. You have to put your clothing through one piece at a time, and sometimes you have to put it through several times, even just to get it kind of dry. So it was pretty tough. It's not like a modern day dryer where you just put it in and press a button and walk away. That kind of tells us about what sorts of things took up a lot of people's time back when these were being used. So this is why it's important for museums to have artifacts. They are super helpful ways for us to look at something from the past and learn a little bit about life back then. I'm talking to you today from one of our collection's storage rooms. This particular room is full of old clothing from Guelph's history. Have you ever thought that the clothing that you're wearing could be part of a museum someday, that it could be an artifact? Clothes are so normal. It's so hard to think of a t-shirt or some jeans showing up in a museum. But clothing is actually a really useful thing for museums to have. For example, take a look at this picture. When you look at it, do you think it's a modern day picture, or does it look like it's from the past? What's the biggest clue that it is from the past? To me, the clothing that they're wearing makes it super obvious that this picture was taken a long time ago. Clothing is also important because it can tell us a lot about the person who owned it. Do you have a favorite outfit or piece of clothing? What makes it your favorite? Take a look at these two pairs of shoes. They're both from the same time period, about 60 years ago. What can you guess about the personalities of the people who owned these shoes? Were they the same or different? So as we've seen, a piece of clothing can tell us a lot about the time that it's from and the person who wore it. This is what clothing looked like 100 years ago. It's really different from what we wear today. What do you think people 100 years from now will be wearing? What do you think that they'll think about the clothes that we wear today? Do you think that they'll look at it and think it looks kind of strange, just like we look at clothing from 100 years ago and think that it looks strange? Well, your project today is to choose a piece of clothing to go into your exhibit. Do you remember the artifact accession sheet that we talked about a few weeks ago, last time we were talking about collecting artifacts? That's the information sheet we have to fill out every time we get a new artifact at the museum, so that we have all the information we need to know about it. There's another worksheet on our Museums Everywhere page and linked to on this post, or which you can just fill out your own version of. Just like with the toy or game that you collected, you'll fill out your name, the date, and the name of the piece of clothing that you're collecting. So that could be something like favorite pair of jeans, Star Wars t-shirt, or yellow dress, or whatever else will describe the piece of clothing. The most important part is where you describe the piece of clothing. Finish the sentences in the description part of the artifact sheet. Don't forget to imagine that you're describing this to someone 100 years from now. What do you think people in the future will want to know about the kinds of clothing people wear today? On the back of the sheet, definitely draw a picture as well so that you have a visual record of what that piece of clothing looked like. And that's it. Hang on to your artifact collection sheet because in a few weeks we'll be using the information that you collected to help make your Museum of You exhibit. Until then, keep joining us each week for more Museum of You activities. They'll all become part of your exhibit. And in the meantime, we'd love to see what piece of clothing you choose to be your artifact. Have an adult post a picture of your artifact along with your collection sheet on social media and tag @Guelph Museums so we can see what you're collecting. Thanks so much for joining us today and see you again next week.